Welcome to
Doodle Time!
Today we're gonna head into the world of Stranger Things. And we'll be drawing Max with her cool hair. And that's really all I can say about her. And she's got a skateboard. So we'll be using pencil, markers on some white paper, using the pencils to kind of get all the outlines in shape, then go in with some black marker, do the outlines, and then add some color. Then we'll do a wacky background. Get your paper! So we're gonna get our paper. We got a pencil. I'm using a 2H, but you can use an HB. We got markers, and I'm using a white gel pen. Alrighty. So what I'm doing now, I'm using my pencil here and just kind of lining up where all the proportions are gonna go. A big vertical line going down the middle. Circle for the head. And the vertical line just kind of tells me where the spine and center of the body lines up. Get shoulders in place. Now figuring out where the waist goes, where the torso sits, and where the hips come down. Finding the edges of Max's hair. Her hair is wavy and curly, so it doesn't come down straight. Kind of flows in bunches and curls a little bit. Now finding the edges of the shoulders, how they come down, where they sit. Now kind of finding the curve at the top end of the shoulders. And the hair comes down to meet the shoulders. I've kind of found that edge. Same thing on the other side. Kind of found where the top of the, arm bone sits. And I'm following that down to the elbow. And then how that curves to the top of the shoulder and extends up to the hair. Now I'm really rough with figuring out where all the hair is gonna sit. And I work in a lot of straight lines. I just tend to find I'm better at drawing straight lines than curved lines, I guess. So I lean into my strength here. Side of the torso. And where Max's shirt is gonna meet her jeans. Following that up to the other side of her torso. Now from her elbow, I gotta figure out how her arm's gonna come down to meet her wrist. And I'm going over sections, it looks like I'm going over them over and over again. That's just me trying to find where everything's gonna sit. And I go lightly at first. If that seems wrong, I can go over it. And then when I'm happy where the lines are sitting, I'll go over it darker. I'm figuring out where Max's collar is gonna sit, where the top of her shirt is. And I put a mark for where the bottom of Max's chin is gonna be. And I'm finding the tilt of her head. That's this line right here, coming up at an angle. Now finding Max's hairline. And the bottom of Max's jaw. Now to find the other side of Max's face and where that meets her hairline. Coming down to her chin. And just going over lines I've drawn before, but with more confidence now that I'm happy with where things are sitting. Now Max is holding a skateboard, and I'm using a reference image to draw from. So what I've done is found in the image that I'm working off of, where the top of the skateboard sits in comparison to some other part of Max. For example, if the top of the skateboard lines up with Max's elbow, in my drawing I can use that as kind of a guide for myself to maintain accuracy, I guess. I'm putting in the wheels of the skateboard now. The perspective of this is a little off and weird. Putting in the skateboard trucks. Now that part of the skateboard that holds the wheels and connects to the actual board, they're called trucks. In case you're wondering why I use that word. Now I'm finding horizontal lines to kind of indicate where Max's eyes are going to sit. And this horizontal line isn't horizontal to the paper, but it's horizontal to the vertical line crossing down Max's face. So whatever angle I found coming down straight from the top of Max's head down to the chin, dividing her face to the left side and right side, all my horizontal lines are going to be perpendicular to that. Putting in Max's belt now. Finding Max's hips down to her legs and getting that shaped in place. Now I'm finding the shape of Max's lower arm coming down to her wrist. And I've kind of divided her entire arm into two sections, top half and bottom half. And that kind of lets me know where the bend is going to occur. Now I'm placing in Max's zipper and where the bottom of her jeans end. A lot of tinkering and putting a line in place, taking a look at it, seeing how that matches up with my reference image. Getting Max's belt buckle in place. I'm trying to find the angle of Max's other arm. What I've done is I've held my pencil up to the reference image at a certain angle, kept that angle, and brought it to my paper. It's not the most accurate, but I find it to be quite helpful. Now this arm is tricky because it comes down over the skateboard to her hand, which is holding the skateboard, so I better put the skateboard in place. I'm lightly putting in the front wheels, kind of figuring out where that's going to line up. And lightly, I'm using my pencil to create lines from the back wheels to the front wheels. That'll help keep the front wheels in place to match where the back wheels are on the skateboard. I'm tinkering away at this one particular front wheel, trying to find the angle that it sits at. Nothing seems to feel right to me, so I keep going over and over. Now I'm gonna get the truck in place. It's a new word you learned today, a truck. Now the front lip of the skateboard. Now I'm using a 2H pencil for my drawing here, and what the numbers represent on a pencil is the density of the graphite that sits inside your pencil. So anything with an H after it, a number and then the letter H, is generally on the denser side, whereas a number and then a B after it is on the softer side, which means you can apply less pressure to get a darker line. I have quite heavy hands, so I can't help but apply a lot of pressure. So if I use a pencil with a B lettering or numbering, then my lines would be really dark, which I don't want. A typical pencil that doesn't have any number or letter classification you can consider to be an HB pencil. HB sits right at the middle of the softness scale. If you don't have access to a 2H pencil, go ahead and use a HB standard pencil. Nothing wrong with that. I also find more denser pencil graphites, they stay sharper longer. I don't like sharpening my pencils. Now, using all the guidelines I put in on the face, I'm going to use that to dictate where the eyes are going to go, where the nose is going to go, the eyebrows, and it helps me create some sort of symmetry in the face. Now, I know what's going to happen. I'm using markers after I do this kind of guideline in pencil, and my markers are quite blunt. They're not as sharp as my pencils are. So a lot of the detail that I'm putting in place might get lost, but that's okay. Now I think everything is where I want it. I'm just going over and adding any last little details on parts that I'm not quite happy with. All right, I think this is roughly everything's in place. Gonna add a bit more details in the face now. Getting the pupils in place. Now what I'm doing is I'm putting in kind of like, how do I put it? Edges for where shading is gonna transition from kind of one shade to another. There's a lighter part of Max's face and a darker part. So these lines just kind of help me define where those lines are or where those parts are gonna sit. All right, marker time. Now, since I took a bit of extra time in finding my guidelines, going over with marker is quite easy. I can quickly go over knowing I'm happy with where everything's sitting. Now, I mentioned before, I am a lot better at doing straight lines than curved lines. If you're following along, don't feel compelled to have to do all these straight, jagged lines. That's just my style. You do you. I don't like where I drew that one eye. I think I messed it up, and I did it with marker. So I'm just going in and drawing another eye underneath it. Now she's got two eyes. I'll do something about that later. That's messed up. Now here's the issue I'm having. I want to put my head over the drawing so I can look at it straight on, but that's where the camera is. So I'm looking at my own drawing from a weird perspective. Oh, look at that. I messed that up real nice. Now I'm gonna go in with some color. And I'm using a technique here where I'm not coloring kind of all crazy like I usually do. I'm being a bit more neat with my coloring. These markers I'm using, they're just traditional, standard, the cheapest Crayola markers you can get. And they leave a bit of a texture when I draw with them. So I'm gonna try and use that texture in a way where I embrace it. So what I'm doing is all my coloring I'm doing with a whole bunch of straight lines going in the same direction, stacked close to each other. And the reason I'm using such cheap markers is I don't want anyone watching to feel compelled to have to spend a lot of money to be able to draw alongside with me or draw on your own. Now the hair's in place. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over this and add some more texture with a different color, but I gotta wait for this to dry before I go in. So I'll move on to another part. I'm gonna go in with this kind of pink color and find these stripes that Max has on her shirt. Now the ends of the sleeves and her collar have a stripe, and then there's a stripe pattern that goes down her shirt and sleeves as well. So I'm gonna put the pink part of that pattern in place. Look at my head. And if you notice, I'm not doing a straight line all the way across the shirt, because what I want to do with these lines is kind of indicate how the fabric of Max's shirt is kind of bunched up a little bit. Now with the black marker, I've noticed I haven't quite given myself enough detail for Max's neck. So I've gone and put the necklines in before I go in with some brown. And that creates the illusion of a shadow that sits underneath Max's hair on her neck. Now with those lines I put in place that define where the shading edges are on Max's face, I'm gonna take this purple and draw in up until that line, or use that original line as a border. And I'll go in with the purple and shade in the darker part of Max's face. All right, now I'll do the same thing on anywhere else Max has skin, since that uses the same colors. Giving myself a bit of a border, and then I'll fill in up until that border edge. And again, the technique I'm using is stacking a whole bunch of a whole bunch of straight lines closely together for some neatness. Now the other arm, I'll do something very similar. Now I'm going in with a brown and coloring in Max's belt. Nice. Now with my black marker, I want to color in the skateboard trucks. Same technique, stacking straight lines snug close to each other. Same thing on the other truck. Now I'm adding the edge of the skateboard with brown. Now if you're wondering why I don't use the same marker while I have it out everywhere in the picture, it's because I don't know where it's gonna go. I'm kind of figuring this out as I go. My set of markers, I think it's got 16 colors total. So I kind of got to figure out how I want to use those colors. Now going in and adding all the color to the jeans. Now I've given enough time for the pink to dry, so I'm gonna go over parts of the pattern on the shirt with another color, which is yellow. In my case, the only yellow I've got is this fluorescent yellow, which looks like a highlighter. So going under the pink with the yellow stripe. Now another stripe I'm gonna add, check out my head, is gonna be with pink, and I'll add that underneath the yellow. And the last color of the stripe pattern, blue, Now I'll go in with a darker color blue and add some detail on the jeans. So it's going to be the creases on the jean fabric. I guess that's it. Another crease there. And the fold in the cuff of Max's jeans. Now I want to add a bit of dimensionality to Max's jeans. And I don't want to use something too dark like the dark blue, so I'm using a gray to go over the jeans. Now I'm going to go in, I'm using a bit of creative license here, and I'm going to do the wheels a shade of orange. This also helps tie in the skateboard to Max's hair a little bit and create some unity. Now for the bottom of the skateboard, I'll be using red. The reference images I'm working from, Max's skateboard is shown to have a bunch of stickers at the bottom, and I don't quite have the, what would I call it? The variety of colors to pull that off. So I'm gonna lean into simplicity here and just make it one flat shade of orange. Now I'm gonna darken the shade part of Max's neck. Use brown for her eyebrows. And then I'm gonna start adding a little bit of detail in Max's hair. So her hair isn't just one solid color. When it gets hit by light, you see shades of orange, shades of brown, shades of red. So I want to emulate that by using a few different colors in my drawing. Now when I'm drawing this hair, you'll notice I'm not being totally accurate. That's not my game plan or my goal here. What my aim is to give the essence of hair and to give the essence of the curls that her hair has. Now with another shade of orange, different than the original that I used for Max's hair, I'm going in and I'm adding kind of a striped pattern. And now Max's hair has more than just one color that sits in it. Now I'm gonna fill in Max's skin. The closest color I've got to skin color is this kind of faded pink. So I'm gonna use that to go over all the white parts left in Max's skin. Again, using straight lines, clumped tight together for ultimate neatness. So Max's skin is all in place. I'm not totally happy with that color, but it's the best I got. If you're working with markers, you'll notice you don't have every color that you might want to use. So you just gotta wing it sometimes. Now there's parts of Max's skin that are brighter than this pink that I've used, so I'm gonna go in with a white gel pen, using the same techniques of stripes, and just highlight certain parts of Max's skin. I got this white gel pen from an art store. You might be able to find one near you at any art store or at a stationery store. Or if you don't want to use one, you don't have to. I'm also using this white gel pen as kind of a cheat to go over the parts of Max's eye that I had messed up originally. I can go over the black marker with this white gel pen and it just kind of erases it. And I'm gonna go around the entire drawing Wherever I feel Max's skin could use some highlights, and I'll bring that up with this stripe shading technique that I've got. Now that I'm happy with that, I'm going to go in and deal with my background. I wanted my background here to convey Max's attitude. So I'm using big punctuation marks. So an exclamation mark and a question mark. So I'll fill these in, kind of the same technique, a whole bunch of vertical, or not vertical, but straight lines clumped together, same direction. Look at all that attitude. Now the black marker I'm using, it's quite weak, I find, on this paper. And it looks a little faded. So I'm going to go over my outline again in black before I color in my background. And if you notice, everywhere I'm adding a second layer of black for my outline, it's just sticking out so much better, popping out of the page. Oh, that's so much nicer. So now I'm going to go in and do an outline around my punctuation marks with the same color I used to color them in with. It just makes, I think it makes them look a lot neater. Now for the background. And when I'm shading, you'll notice I am going from left to right because I'm right-handed. It's to avoid any smudging as I'm coloring this entire page in. So looking at this, it feels like the punctuation marks in the background, they're tending to blend in with the pink of the background. So I want to separate those a little bit. So I'm going to go in with a purple. It's quite dark still, but not the same darkness as the black that I used, and it'll help the background and foreground stand out from each other. I'm going to go in and outline all my punctuation with the purple. And there you have it. Max from Stranger Things.